वक्रतुंड महाकाय सूर्यकोटि समप्रभ निर्विघ्नं कुरु मे देव सर्वकार्येषु सर्वदा। सरस्वती नमस्तुभ्यं वरदे कामरूपिणी विद्यारंभं करिष्यामि सिद्धिर्भवतु मे सदा। गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुः गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुः साक्षात् परं ब्रह्म तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः।
Namaskar. Namaskar to all who are watching this panel discussion live. And today's panel discussion is about the view of music and dance in Hinduism. So in our Indian situations, you can see all the social habits, festivals, lifestyles, culture, and all art forms and the religion, which is Sanatana Dharma, having the other name as Hinduism, is intertwined. And we can't separate one from the other. So this is how the Indian lifestyle has gone through for thousands of years. And in our discussion today, I'm moderating the discussion, and I'm Nilay Ravindran, the violin teacher from Singapore Indian Finance Society. And with me we have Guru M.S. Vidya, who is a vocal Carnatic vocal teacher, and we have Guru Vikas, who is a Bharatanatyam teacher. So today we'll be going through some of the key points, like from the origin of the art forms and the evolution and its relevance all throughout the time to the religion, to the people's lifestyle, and the different forms which evolved after that till the current times. So we have a simple introduction of the origin of the art forms, and I will ask Mrs. Vidya to share her views about the origin of music.
Thank you, sir. Namaskaram to one and all who are here with us in a live participation of the discussion about the beauty that lies in the art form, music and dance. I would like to take you all to the ancient period of the Vedas. That is, after the Vedas, collectively are called the Shrutis. And that which is passed on from the memory of the Vedas by the oral tradition is called Smriti. And Upanishads belong to the category of Smriti. And we have Vedas, Shastras, and Puranas, from which the mainstream of music, the divine music, the music that is sacred, is passed on to us. So it is probably an account of more than 15,000 years when we trace, and historians have tried to trace the history of music. And in those lines, we find that very interestingly, the Shrutis, which are 22 in number, we all know that Pythagorean theorem also, Pythagoras theorem has been 22/7. So it is the Shruti that gave us, and in the Chandogya Upanishads, we find references of these 22 Shrutis and underlined by the 7 notes. Like just like the 7 colors, we have the natural 7 notes, which is universal in nature. And these 7 notes are called Saptaswaras, the Sa, Re, Ga, Ma, Pa, Da, Ni, which had their names later after many centuries. But the origin of these 7 swaras were from the 3 swaras, Udatta, Anudatta, and Swarita of the Samaveda. And the chants were taken from Rig Veda, and they were a bit distorted, or we can also say that they were, they were modified called sthobas, and the 3 note up, down, and middle notes, which became 7 notes later. So that is how we have the Saptaswaras, and they are all of divine origin.
We say like the swaras which are involved in the chantings of the Vedas, right?
Yes.
3 swaras or 5 swaras.
Yes. They are the 7 swaras now, and that is universal, and it's also a contribution of Hindu heritage to the world. And it was Pythagoras who carried it from India. He lived in India, he studied here under the Gurukula tradition, and he learned all these things, and he took it to the Western world. He passed it on to the Western world, and where even if now it is universal. The 7 notes are universal. And we have the scales of music, which was developed later into the period of Mahabharata, Ramayana, etc. Also, we have 2 ways in which the scales of music have emerged. And one is called the Marga, one is called the Desi. So Marga is Vaidika, that is coming from the Vaidika, that is Vedas. And we have Laukika Sangeetha, that is later on carried on to the posterity as Gandharva Veda, which is music. So we have 2 halves. That is one pertaining to the people and their lives, the common folks. And one was from the Devatas and gods and goddesses. We also have references of instruments held by Goddess Saraswati. One of the most ancient instruments was flute, and it was held by Lord Krishna. So it is associated, and Goddess Saraswati, who's a music goddess, she's supposed to be holding veena, which has developed from many ages and come down to us in its most modern format, and also one of the most elevated format. And it is directly connected to the human body. It is the representation of human body. And we all know that the spinal bones are 24 in number. And so the Vainikas of the past who experimented on various forms of venas, they tried to find out, they were the saints who found out that the 24 threads of vena are similar to that of the 24 spinal bones. So human body was basically the instrument through which all other instruments emerged over time.
That's why I think we have a reference in Ramayana about Ravana playing veena from his own body to please.
He picked a nerve from his spinal bone and he tied it to the strings as strings, and he played it to please Lord Shiva. Yes.
Yeah, that's good. We have a big wide coverage from the old times. And we'll now pass on to like Bharatanatyam, how the dance form emerged, the origin. So Vikas, please.
Namaskaram. I just want to talk about how the dance and music, which is connected to the part of the worship. So in all of you know, in ancient India, the dance and music was considered as a religious ceremony and most pleasing to God. It was an essential part of the worship in the temple. Just as a man offered flowers, the dancers and musicians, they offered their music and dance to the God. So for dancers, they see themselves as a flower. The body see as a flower, then offer to the God. It's a complete surrender to the God. It's a beautiful way of expression to the divine. And all the dance styles of India today is developed, nourished and flourished in the temple, and it was always fostered by the religion. Yeah. Then the temple was not just a place for worship. It was a center for learning, education, and it was a center for gatherings. For example, education through sculptures, painting, music, and dance and literature, everything, bhakti, through the spiritual, everything. Because they had their gatherings, and the scholars they talk about the philosophical discussion that happened in the temple, and the poets they present their the work for the first time to the public in the temple, and all this happened in the temple, and it was such an educational a center for. It's not just a place of worship. So it is not, and also. It's a beautiful other thing is that India alone has the concept of God who dances. So we have Shiva, known as Nataraja, he's the king of dances, and he dances in the hall of consciousness, and his dances includes this the 5 divine prerogatives of creation, preservation, regeneration, and weeding and benediction, etc. You know. And we have Krishna, we have Lord Manmata dancing, we have Indrani, we have Skanda, we have Nartana Ganapati. There's so much references of the dancing gods in our religion. So it's always interrelated. The dance and music is not separated with the religion. It is conceived, it is developed, it's flourished, everything which through the religion. So we can say this. Indian our religion is a complete a complete religion. It's such a has beauty, and not only the spiritual and
yes, everything.
Everything is
what you say, it is a way of life. Life has everything.
Yes.
Like our culture, living styles, art forms.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So in our religion, if you take Hinduism, Sangeetha, we have all texts which has been preserved. Have been preserved for a very long time, since the Vedic times. We have some talk about references in the religious texts about the art forms. You can deal about the music.
Yes. Okay. In fact, as I said before, the oral tradition was in from Vedic period, and there were many innovations that took place in the country. But even before that, probably at the beginning of the 1st and 2nd century, great saints and contributors to music and dance and personalities like Bharatanatyam was one among them who thought that it was very much necessary to put everything on the treatise, like preserve for the posterity, which helps in transmitting the art forms to the next future generations. It was very important for them to document everything. So the very first document that we find and we get the authentic information we get is from Bharatanatyam, who defined music, that is Sangeetha. The term Sangeetha was used, and he said that the definition of Sangeetha is a conglomeration of music, that is Geetam, as that instrument music, that is Vadyam, and dance, Nritya. So Geeta, Vadya, Nritya, a combination of all these 3 is the definition of the holistic definition of what music was. Sangeetha was from Bharata in his Natya Shastra. And going back to the times of Mahabharata and Ramayana, which are epics, which remain with us, they are written by great sages. Like Vyasa narrated the story, and Ganesha was the one who wrote the story. And at the end of that, as a culmination, we have the Gita, Bhagavad Gita. It's a song. Bhagavad Gita was a song composed on the spot by Lord Krishna, who was the Yogeshwara, and he stood in the middle of the war field and he sang the song. And that's how the concept of singing came into existence. And we also have Mahabharata, the Ramayana and Mahabharata. And in Ramayana, when we go back 10,000 years ago, it was said that Valmiki, who composed 24,000 verses, describing the Rama's life, the whole of his life and story and avatarhood of Rama. It is said that those 24,000 verses were memorized by his Rama's own sons, Lava and Kusha, under the guidance of their guru and Valmiki himself. And they narrated this in the form of music. They went and they did the propaganda, they propagated the story of Rama throughout the country and beyond the borders of what we have as India today. And they went around barefooted They were young, they were only 7 years old, but they sang the glory of Lord in ragas. In those times, they were called as Jati. So Rama was a great promoter and appreciator of those songs that were sung by his own sons. So he listened to those songs for days and days and days. So that was how it was. We find references in Ramayana also. And later on, coming again to Bharata and post-Bharata period, we have certain musical scales which were modified and given as ragas. The name raga was brought into vogue and into light by none other than Matanga Muni, his Brihad Veshi. So he has collected a lot of compositions, as I said, a lot of ragas which came from the Desi market, Desi cult. So he gave a very big, huge number of ragas to the as contribution to the country.
Okay. So we have a very good reference part music in our text. So Bharatanatyam also, or generally the dance forms also have very good references in text. Please carry on.
I would like to mention about the traditional story which is mentioned by Narada Muni in his Natya Shastra. There's a traditional story. He mentions the transitional period of 2 ages, that is Satyuga and Treta Yuga. The world had become steeped into this the desire and greed and jealous and anger between not only gods but also the asuras, the Yadava, Danavas and Yakshas and Nagas and all the evil spirits. After seeing this plight, Indra and other devas went to Lord Brahma and asked the slave to do something like this. The situation is like this. The Brahma was not really happy about that because he was thinking that I've created this 4 Vedas for the benefit for the good. It's there for all references how a person would lead a life. But people are neglecting it, or people are not utilizing it. What's the point of making a new thing? Then Indra explains that is not the case because these 4 Vedas are really good, and there are some people that are experiencing it, using it, but it is not really accessible to all the people because the lower caste people are not allowed to read that, and only those who are educated upper caste people are benefiting by this. So Indra suggested, why don't you an amusement like Vedanta, which could be accessible to every people, and also every person can hear and listen and see, so that it will directly reach to the people and it will stay in their minds. So what Brahma said is he went into a deep meditation, thinking about all the 4 Vedas which is created earlier. So then what he did is extracting the elements from these 4 Vedas. He created a 5th Veda called Natya Veda. So he has taken from Rig Veda, he has taken the lyrics, and from Samaveda he has taken music, and from Yajur Veda he has taken the Abhinaya, and the sentiments taken from Atharvana Veda. So he created the 5th Veda called Natya Veda, and he taught this to Bharata Muni. So Bharata Muni was chosen by them because this Natya Veda is not really easy to understand and to present also. So they wanted a person who can really absorb it and also to spread. So that they chose sages.
Was the chosen one.
Yeah, Bharata Muni was chosen by them.
Yes, as I said, no wonder that Bharata Muni explained Sangeetha as all collective form of all these things, which he obtained from the gods and goddesses.
Yes, correct. So Bharata Muni taught this. He has 105 sons. He taught this art form dance to his 105 sons, and with the help of Gandharvas and Apsaras, they performed a dance drama called Tripura Dahanam before Lord Shiva and Goddess Parvati. So the Lord Shiva and Parvati was so pleased by seeing this dance production, and Shiva wanted to add his own cosmic, majestic dance to it and asked Tandu, one of his attendants, to teach Bharata Muni that his own cosmic dance. So Tandu taught his masculine, powerful dance to Bharata Muni, and so that after that it came the name as Tandava because it's been taught by Tandu. And same as Parvati she taught her the feminine dance movements to Bharata. So both the elements, the feminine and the masculine came together and it shaped beautifully, you know. And later on, Parvati taught this dance to Usha, who is the daughter of Banasura. And Usha taught to the milkmaids of Dwaraka. Then from there, it gone to the ladies of Saurashtra. From then, in turns, it spread to other countries. So this
It's a fascinating story.
yeah, this is the traditional story with Varda mentioned in the Natya Shastra.
So it's a good reference.
Yeah, very nice to hear that, because I have also learned, read about Saint Tyagaraja. In this context, I'd like to bring it as a reference point, that Tyagaraja obtained the Shiva Purana, and when he went through that, Shiva has lent out the secrets of music to Parvati, which was later on passed on to great saints like Tyagaraja of that order. So it is, even the dance form has emerged from Shiva and Parvati, who are the divine parents of the world.
There are some simple references about music and dance in Ramayana Mahabharata, which forms the backbone of all the Puranas. So it is very big epics which everybody celebrate.
Yes. Actually, in Ramayana and Mahabharata, we have full of stories. We have stories at every step, like Rama's noble step with Ahalya, and on Ahalya when he touched her. So every step has a spiritual, a philosophical, as well as a divine story connected to it, which were brought out by compositions by many saints. And I think even the Tamil traditions also had many songs and compositions, prabandhas, and many compositions that came. So referring to that, it was the Jati, as I said, Jati was the main given to Raga. And even during the times of Mahabharata, we have references of cultivating this Nadopasana. That is, Nada is nothing but the primordial sound, the Omkara. And Omkara is said to be the Moolam of creation. Nada Moolam Idam Jagat. So the whole creation stands on Nada. So people around, they say it's Big Bang and other things. But it is actually in the Indian ideology, we have the entirety of, the omniscience of sound, Nada, the primordial sound, from which everything is emanated. So these concepts have emerged from not only from Vedas, but also it was carried on down to the Mahabharata and the Ramayana, etc.
There are a few references about here.
Yes, there are references in Ramayana and Mahabharata about regarding dance as well. One of our great warrior, Arjuna, he was appointed, one of his period of exile, he was appointed as a teacher for dance and music in the court of Virata. So Virata king appointed him as a teacher for his daughters, the princesses. And always there in the Mahabharata, also the courtesans, they were asked to present dance performance for these honored guests. And the references of Gandharvas and Apsarasas who danced to distract the sages from their great penance. So all the sorts of references about, and also in Kalidasa's Malavikagnimitram, there are references of that dancer and the training of the dancers.
Okay, a lot of literature has been drawn from from the stories of Mahabharata and Ramayana have been depicted in the form of operas, music and dance clubbed together, and there are a lot of operas that have been created and composed by great saints, kings, etc. in our country. So which have direct.
As Mr. Bika said, I think the dance and music art forms can distract even the tradition penance.
Yes.
So they're powerful forms.
Very important point.
Not distract means I say to divert, maybe
Yes,
to divert from
Yes.
from bad to good, maybe. Yeah.
Exactly. Actually, they are the representations of emotions. And the swaras, every swara has their own emotive nature. And when they combine in the form of a raga, they become entities. They become structured. They are equal to devatas. Actually, we consider them as devatas or demigods. And they have the power to convey any kind of emotion. Like we have a single raga which can convey different emotions through the compositions. The words also sometimes are not necessary to convey the meaning. But music and dance together can convey a lot of meaning together.
So the forms like what the compositional forms kind of emerged like in the initial periods it was Vedic hymns like which were chanted with 3 swaras or 5 swaras maximum. Then when it took the other forms, then came the structured formers like Prabandha. And in Tamil also we say like during the 4th, 6th centuries to 9th, 10th centuries. So there was a renaissance of Saivism and Vaishnavism. Because during that time, the Chola period and all, the kings were, they themselves had converted to Jainism. In Tamil, they call Samana. So there's a lot of reference about that period also in Tamil literatures. So during that period, then the Nayanmars, who were the Shiva devotees, and the Alvars, who were the devotees of Mahavishnu, they wrote a lot of hymns in praise of the gods, and they propagated it, and also they converted the kings with their songs, and they converted back them to Hinduism. But though temples were all preserved, there were not any damage to the temple during that time. But there was the Renaissance, after which it flourished more. So generally during a long time, if there is no war, art forms thrive very well.
Yes.
So that we have seen in like the situation of Kerala also, where the Travancore Maharajas did not have war for centuries, and they turned to artists like Swati Tirunala, Raja Ravi Verma later. So Prabandhas were the previous format from which maybe the Kritis and other formats evolved, right?
Yeah. Prabandhas are huge compositions. Huge compositions in those times. They were mostly in Sanskrit. Probably they the composers drew their inspiration from Vedas. Vedas which were lengthy. We have a lot of chants, so many on different gods and goddesses. So in the same manner, they wanted to bring the message from there to common men, probably in the regional languages, which was flourishing during that time. And for today's context, even the language of Tamil or any other language in that period was quite tough. When we go through those prabandhas or the literary content of those songs, find it quite tough.
So maybe comparatively easier to
Yes. As time passed by, it was simplified for posterity, because now we know, all of us know, we are having lack of time to achieve anything. But in those days, music was one of the easiest means and medium of expression. It was utilized, the ragams that were existing then and there, they were utilized to promote these, the Shaivism, as he said, and Vaishnavism, as well as the Trimata, the Dvaita, Advaita, and Vishishtadvaita principles. They were being sung, and only a few of the class had the power to, converse in Sanskrit, and they were doing the Sanskrit studies. But the rest of the cult, that is, the rest of the people around in the different regions of India, with the different languages, so they had no means of learning. So, as you said, people went to the temples, they learned these art forms. Later on, these prabandhas, which had 6 angas and 4 dhatus, which I call. So they were very huge compositions, which were again simplified later by composers like Purandaradasa, who brought in a standard of basic foundational training that was given to society during probably post 13th century. So during 13th century, there was contributors for music from saints like Jayadeva, and we had Annamacharya, who contributed in Andhra region. And we also have the names of, we can take the names of Mirabai, Tulsidas, Kabir Das, and many other saints.
They call the Bhakti movement.
Bhakti movement, yes, exactly. That's how it started. And they say that even the putting all the songs and ragas in a proper classification format was done by Saint Vidyanand and was passed on to postage.
Sangeetha's contribution was also a very
Yes,
important
yes,
one
yes.
during that period.
Sangeetha was a great saint. He has written about many subjects. He was a master and exponent of more than 64 art forms. And he starts his, he has given us a treatise called Sangeetha Ratnakara, in which the very first chapter, interestingly, is on embryology. Embryology is the first chapter, and later comes the Shruti, Swara, and chapters like Tala, dance, etc. So he starts with how the body, in the human body, in the embryo, the very first traces of emergence of notes, emergence of music, as well as sound is produced in the body, the human body, and it's only enjoyed by the human beings, and it's not there in the animal cult. So that is where
Sangeetha has reference to Bharatanatyam and Bharatamuni has reference to music. So it's all like interdependent and intertwined. And any references about in the medieval period?
Maybe
Like some context. Yes.
So if you talk about Chilapadigara, okay, for Natya Shastra we say it's an encyclopedia on Indian dance and music, literature, theatre, architecture, etc.
The same in those times.
Yeah. The same way, this Chilapadigara is also written by Rangovadigal, roughly the same period of Natya Shastra. So the scholars say it's like an encyclopedia for Tamil culture. So it's talk about Tamil culture and Tamil music and Tamil dance, etc. So in that, the main character, heroine of the Silappatikaram is Madhavi. She's a dancer, and it has a brief description of the training of dance and music a person go through before she go for her performance, Arangetram. And also there is a dedicated for a chapter called Arangetra Kadari, which describes about the Padanur Adalgal. Padanur Adalgal is 11 types of dances, dance forms which Madhavi performed for her Arangetra. You know? So it's interesting, all the stories from the Purana, and all is the good winning over evil. So example is one was the Pradhana again, and Krishna's victory, Krishna dance after his victory over this mad elephant and Manasura, and Skanda's dance after his victory on the demons. And Manmada, Dedi Manmada dance, and Indrani's dance, and this was references given, and these are the dance forms which she danced for during her Arangetra. So complete dance and
culture.
Yes.
It's a rich amount, a lot of culture behind that.
Yeah.
And is it a part of the Dravidian culture that is now developed, and Tamil Nadu has become a great seat of art?
After that period, I think there were some invasions, Mughal invasions and all. So people were displaced from one place to the other. It may be a blessing in disguise also for after that, because we have various cultures getting to one place. Because Tamil Nadu was a place which was not affected by many of these invasions. So Maratha kings came to Tamil Nadu, from Vijayanagara kingdom, Nayaka kings came to Tamil Nadu. So everybody had carried their traditions to Tamil Nadu, and there I think there emerged one good form, and Tanjore became the pedestal of these all emergences of dance and music forms. And Maratha kings also have given a great patronage to the art forms, to artists, and to propagate it. But I think Bharatanatyam also was first brought into light by Chola kings, and then during the same Tanjore. So the same way, the place was same, but the kings changed, and they took a different form. So the compositional changes, then what do you consider the changes happen?
Yes. In fact, after Purandaradasa, probably Purandara from his times, maybe around 15th century onwards, there were a lot of bhakti movement compositions pertaining to bhakti, to the evolution of bhakti movement. And it was also accounted for the lot of contribution from saints of Maharashtra also. They were called Sant groups. So they were nomadic in nature, and these Haridasas, which we call as Purandaradasa and his the line. So they were nomadic. They went from one place to another, from small village to village, and propagated music and bhakti also through their compositions. And in a way, it was also a propagation of Vaishnavism, Shaivism, etc. So there was a big renaissance that took place, between 15th and 16th, 17th centuries. And it also happened in Tamil Nadu by Arunachala Kavirayar, the Muthu Tandavar and Arunagiranadar during the period. So they were great contributors of bhakti movement as well as compositions that even common men could sing at home. So I remember even my grandmother used to sing at home, and while she was cooking, she would wake up early in the morning, and that was a part and parcel, and it penetrated into everybody's life, every household. So it actually penetrated slowly into the society.
When it transformed, I think it went to the all strata of the society, like even folk arts and whatever be their lifestyle, be their agriculture or whatever, only the forests, even hunters. We have even desert singing about. So all these are spread. The classical forms might have spread every part and parcel of the people's life and also to the different states of society. So temples were the center of attraction for everything. As you mentioned about temples, it's not only for devotion. So it was a social gathering, and they listened to each other, they spoke to each other, then came to know about the art forms like not only singing, storytelling, dances or whatever, painting. So sculpture has been also a very good art form in the temple. During after this British era, like after the King's era ended, the British took over India. And during the British era, I think some traditions changed from like everything centered to the temple. They changed the tradition so that nothing was lost. Like when the traditions of Devadasi systems were stored in temples. Can you throw a bit of light on that?
Yeah. So Devadasis are the dancing belongs to Devadasi families. So Devadasis were very educated and very respected the community in those days.
First one was, I think, from Quartet, right? Tanjore Quartet.
Yeah. Yes. So when the Devadasis were the Chola kingdom, all these dynasties were very much encouraged promoted to this artists, singers, and dancers. Even Rajaraja Chola appointed more than nearly 400 dancers to the temples, Devadasis. So after this, the period of when the Britishers came, they've kind of after the abolishment, act of they kind of banned Devadasi system, and this art forms taken from Devadasis and given to the upper caste people to reach out, and so that the normal the other castes also started practicing and performing this thing. So we talk about Tanjore Quartet. They were also they were the musicians, they were dance teachers, they were matvanas, they were composers. They are the credit goes to today we see the structure of Bharatanatyam which we present. The credit goes completely to the Tanjore Quartet, the four brothers. So Chinnaya, Pannaya, Shivanandam, Vadivelu. So they were also attached to the Brihadishwara temple, And they were also the Asthana Sangeetha, the artist of the court of Sarfuji and Travancore and Mysore. And
they have beautified the art forms to such a great extent.
yes, they have composed so many padams and the musical structures for dance. Yes, they have
Padams are meant for depicting the Madhura Bhakti also.
yes.
The Madhura Bhakti is very important and has come down as thousands and thousands of compositions from Annamacharya and his predecessors later on. And also Madhura Bhakti is one form of bhakti which was highlighted by many contributors also from Kerala and Tamil Nadu. These composers, they composed padams. Very nice. So padams being a very integral form of music also. Music that was lying in the padams was very rich. And just before the period of the music trinity, I will take the link from you. So, and music trinity contributed to a great extent for the development of music. And moreover, they simplified the Kirtana format, which was the contribution from the saint cult. And they minimize the wordings and they put a balance of music and words.
Yeah, with different languages involved.
And the concepts that they took, the contents, the literature contents was lovely, and it was the rhetorical beauty that they brought in the form of these compositions, which is in vogue now. It is flourishing so well. Everybody learns. Like we have composition of Tyagaraja. I would like to take an example. Shobhilu Saptaswara, Sundarula Bhajintave Manasa. And this composition, he cites the emergence of 7 notes, which are beautiful, glittering, bright, and always he asks the mind to do the worship of those Saptaswarams, which have emerged from Nabhi, Hrit, Kantha, Rasana, Nasa, and etc. from all the chakras of the body. Adula Indu Shobhilu Saptaswara, Dhara Rit Samadula in the earth, on the universe. It has emerged from as the pillars from Gayatri Mantra, and from Samaveda, its emergence is from Samaveda. And the effulgence of the 7 notes has also been derived from the flute of Nadam of Lord Krishna. And he gives examples of various evolutional forms of these Saptaswaras. And Samadulalo Vara Gayatri Hridayamuna Sura Bhusura Manasamuna. And great people like Brahma, Vishnu, Maheshwara also took up the Nadopasana and they became effulgent. So that's how Tyagaraja cites the importance, the significance of music through his compositions. And as you said, when music was always clubbed with dance. And Tyagaraja also could bring out the format of music which is used for moksha marga. And he cites in many of his compositions that when a person with full devotion and faith in the Lord sits, gets up, wakes up early in the morning and does the sadhana, and he can attain moksha. Moksha Moganana. There are so many beautiful compositions that he has contributed, and so is Dikshitar and the Shama Shastri, who are a part of the music trinity.
So we consider that Sringara and Bhakti may be 2 different parts, but though in some way both are same, it seems. Sringara is a way of showing the bhakti and offering oneself as becoming an Nayaki, considering the Paramatma as Nayaka. Right. When the expressions have been growing, the themes have grown, whatever, but the art forms remain the same. So just to show to our audience about how sometimes you can do music and dance, they come together, even without much of before that.
Oh, without preparation. That's an impromptu pattern.
You can try to sing one composition, maybe Nijali, which is familiar. You can try.
Would love to do that, sir.
You can try to do action for that.
Vikas sir, can I take a Kannada song? Because I love one song, beautiful song. It's called Matada Bharatiya. Have you heard that song?
Yes.
Yes, you heard it? Okay. I would love to sing 2 lines from that. Of course, I'll tell you the meaning. It's Matada Bharatanatyam, so can't you speak out? Ma Ramanani. Okay. So the goddess, or you can say the Nayaki, says to the Nayaka. And the first line is about Madhura Bhakti. But the next 2 lines is the Bhakti, the Bhakti of a mother and child, of that kind. So a devotee and a god. So that is the kind of depiction in the next 2 lines. I'll sing that for you. Tande Thai Galante, Tappade Anudina, Andadi Salahuva, Swami Neenalladi. That is being like a parent, and for me, for all the time, you've been here to protect me. And bestowing me bliss, you need to protect me. And why don't you speak out? That's how it goes. So can you show 2 varieties of depiction, one of the Madhura Bhakti and one of the Vatsalya Bhakti? Okay.
I will try.
We'll attempt for the audience. Yeah.
Yes.
Of course, I don't have the Shruti box. Sorry. You want me to? No, it's okay. Matada Bharatanatyam, Matada Bharatanatyam, Maramanane, Matada Bharatanatyam. Maramanane, Matada Bharatanatyam. Tande Thai Galante, Tappade Anudina, Andadi Salahuva, Swami Neenallave. Tande Thai Galante, Tappade Anudina, Anandadi Salahuva, Pranesha Vithala, Matada Bharatanatyam. That was an impromptu attempt from our side.
I'm not really sure when
No,
the
that was
meaning
wonderful.
or
It was
not.
a
I just
beautiful
went to the
depiction
whole
from
meaning
your
of
side.
the maybe I was wrong with the word by word meaning, but I went to the whole meaning.
So music and dance are beyond words.
Yes.
Yes.
So yes, we come to the conclusion part. So the expressions can be different, the interpretations can be different, but the main theme for all the art forms, not only Bharatanatyam and music, most of the art forms in India remains to be the religion even now. So even in music, we might have different themes also, which later develop. And during the times, we have seen the first, the other theme which was allowed into Carnatic music was like patriotism, because they need to propagate. For every propagation, they took the art forms. So like drama, dance, or singing, whatever. So our art forms have been long, like entrenched in the religion. It is, and it will remain to be so forever. So with that, we come to the conclusion of this thing. If there are any questions, we would like to answer. Yes. there is a question like, many times youth and even older people are not able to appreciate the arts because they are unable to understand it. Okay, would you like to answer this?
Yeah, sure. So the modern youth and the society are not. Yes. In fact, music, especially I'm talking about music, of course even dance also combined. So when it comes to Indian art forms, great for anybody to appreciate the art. And since these arts have found us in the Indian societal circumstances, and we are not exposed to that environment. If we are not exposed to that environment, and if we are drawn in by other cultures, we get attracted to different cultures. Probably it would be difficult initially for anybody to understand the nuances of the art.
Can we put it in this way that like any sustained attempt to understand the art forms by listening or seeing will create more interest and they will start
appreciation.
They'll start understanding it. So the thing is more exposure and more seeing and listening.
It is what we choose
Yes.
to watch and see and learn.
Okay, there's a question like, what is the evolution of different dance forms like Bharatanatyam, Dangam, Kuchipudi, Kathak, Odissi, etc. Evolution. Yes. Asking this, what is the evolution means, like how it might have been formed or something.
Okay. I think as scholars says, like in once in a time in all Bharatavarsha had one form of dance, even maybe one form of music. Then the later on, due to according to the culture, the worship manner, language, and characteristics, and it might have changed.
Intermingling of
cultures. Yeah. There is also maybe the influence of folk dances, and the influence was from the invasion and the trade, etc. The people will be coming and going. That influence might have, made influences. And also maybe sometimes maybe will be some blockage between the two places. Some then there will not be contact with each other. So maybe then they will form their own characteristics, might have adopted to their dance forms. So it might have changed.
The languages are different.
Yeah. And the same thing. The same, maybe if you take one celebration, people will worship in a different. They will celebrate in a different manner. That's all aspects might have affected, influenced to form a different forms. If you look at Kathak, the Mughal and Persian, the influences are very clear, very much seen. And if you go to Manipuri also, both local and foreign influences are very clear. And same as I think all the dance forms, their regional, the influences might have.
In the initial years, the differences might be very little, but in the course of 2 centuries or 3 centuries, the total format might have changed.
And I also heard that South Indian practitioners would have traveled to the north and traveled to different parts of the country to spread their ideas and their way of their outlook towards the
I can say that even like the ragas, like for example, I have heard that the Shankarabharana, which is sung in Carnatic music, is called Bilawal.
Yes.
In Hindustani music.
Yes.
But how it got the name Bilawal was, there was a nomadic group called Belawali, and they sang that, and that was taken as Bilawal. So there can be some exchanges like this.
Yeah.
Listen, it's a question like, very interesting. What's the relevance of art forms to the current style of life in Singapore? I like to take the question myself.
Yes, please.
So, current style of life. Okay. Generally, the Singapore way of life is about money. Okay, to be frank, yes. So, without money, nothing happens. So, when we go for materialistic things, our minds are always disturbed because we don't find any real meaning in whatever we look for. So, I might sound philosophical, but in due course, or when you get to the age, everybody feels that. Because when you are earning money, okay, you earn a lot. But what have you done in your life?
Example is this pandemic period.
So these things, these art forms, when they learn, even when a rich man comes and learns that art form and he performs, or to little to extent, he practices that art form. He listens to other artists. So they get a mental satisfaction, and they are not into their usual official things all the time. So getting tense about it. And also, I used to tell my students, any job you do, 65 you have superannuation, you're retired. After that, you live for 20 years, 15 years. What you're going to do with that? Then you are a useless person. So when a person learns an art or he becomes an artist, the purpose of life never ends. So a musician or a dancer can be a teacher all the time, even though he or she cannot perform beyond the age. So that things getting involved in something, not only for money, but for our self-satisfaction means a lot to our life. And when we look back after in our old age, we think that we have done something which is useful, and we have passed down something tradition to the next generation. So these things make us a bit satisfied and life meaningful. I think I
There is
answered
a
the question.
purpose in life which you can think of.
The second question, can the religious texts be tuned to music? Yes, you can,
So
you
it's
can
quite
say a few things.
interesting, the question. As far as a musician is concerned, and a performer, a musician who's a performer also, who's a successful performer, he thinks about how the music and how the religious texts can be promoted, and the values within the message can be passed on effectively, taking music as a medium of expression. So if the musician has gone deep into studying ragas, and he knows how the saints and how the composers have used the ragas in depicting values that are similar to those in the texts. Probably they can sing like Viruttams in a few ragams, and we have a lot of scope in music. We can present them as ragamalikas to make it more interesting. And the main advantage of singing some of the, as you said, religious texts also have a vast span of texts. It starts, as I said, prabandhas, very strict, rigid words are there. There we can use less music. And some tunes which are popular. Those they can be tuned to popular tunes. We have every day morning we have the Suprabhatam of Venkateshwar Suprabhatam, sounding in every house. The record is reverberating in every house. So there are some simple tunes, and there are some tunes where you have shlokams, stotrams, viruttams, etc., where you need to expand them. You can use ragas, and you can use ragamalikas to tune them. You can also comment on that. Yeah.
Yeah, religious text means the Vedic texts will be hard to tune to music.
Vedic texts are there to be tuned by.
No, it has fixed swaras and whatever. So the later ones maybe like it is a bit free, but whatever we do, it's not about if a sloka or a stotra exists, whether we set the music or not. Then if we set it to music, how it is accepted, whether it is applicable, whether it sounds good, everything matters. So it is according to the situations, but not the very older text. Singing Gayatri mantras in some tune, it may help to just propagate, but actually it is rare, good to recite those.
As they just keep them in their original form. And
yes. And there's a question about dance. And the question is, can all songs be set to dance?
It depends. What all songs means, if you take the traditional compositions, if the words, the lyrics gives the scope to show some expression, show some meaning, then it can be danced. And it depends on what you want to portray. If you take just the swaras and you can put anything into any expression you want, you can put into it. If you take the kritis or something, that also you should see is the same as Tanavarnam and Padavarnam. So Tanavarnam used for musical concerts and and the Padavarnam, because it has a scope for to do the expression with the words, whereas Tanavarnam it gives more of the melody.
It's mainly for vocal
voice and the raga bhavams, and so it's very hard to dance to put the abhinayam for that. Whereas if has a proper structured padams and it's giving you enough scope to do abhinayam, of course it's
and the speed also matters, I believe.
Yeah, speed also matters.
There's another question on dance, like why most of the songs in Bharatanatyam or the language Telugu?
Yeah, I think better ma'am can answer.
Telugu, yes. Of course, in India, in South India especially, only pertaining to the region of South. Composers like Tyagaraja have done these compositions very beautifully, and mainly the reason I feel is because of the euphemism. There is euphemism, which means the vowel endings, the flow, and the smoothness and the way in which we pronounce the words, the softness of the words that we use. It stands one step above Sanskrit also. Because in Sanskrit, we have the vibhakti and all the other grammatical aspects that come into picture, that come in the forefront. While Telugu is a very fluid language, it is a very nebulous language, and even King Krishnadevaraya, in his, though he was from a Tulu background, he spoke Tulu, and all of us know the great empire, the emperor of Vijayanagar. So Krishnadevaraya himself says, Desha Bhashallo Telugu Lessa. Means he declares Telugu as one of the most apt languages for the South Indian music as well as for literature.
I think for dance, the question was about particularly dance. I think the composers, as I said, because of the invasions and all, many other people settled in Tamil Nadu. So there were such traditions, and the Tanjore Quartet, they also predominantly had the language as
Telugu background.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
They
it
had a lot
depends.
of influence from the kings. Also.
It depends on the composers, their mother tongue, and the rulers at that time.
Yes. And they were from the Oduar families, and they all, came down from, Telugu, and they settled down.
They migrated. Actually, many of them artists from Andhra migrated towards south, and they took the refuge of the kings of those times, like the Maratha kings, who were great patrons of languages as well as art forms. And they themselves were composers. They composed in Telugu, and they encouraged others also to compose.
But it was, I think, all of the compositions. Now, currently, if you see the last 30-40 years, we have more Tamil compositions for Bharatanatyam.
Right? Tamil and all the languages we are using, Tamil and Sanskrit, even Marathi, all
Because
the
language
even the
plays
advanced
a
was being
major
also
role.
used for.
Yes, language plays a major role in the expression, the way we express emotions. It is not actually only human expression. It is always divine also. The expressions which happen, the conversations that happen between God and devotees, and the storyline, as I said, Puranas, stories still exist in the songs. So when we need a fluent language for that, and also a language that common man understands. So all these aspects need to be seen when we look at.
Literature is also a part of music and dance. So it gives the value, adds the value, and allows to express. So for expression, we need language, music, and dance all together.
And we have taken elements from every side, from every art form, to beautify and to make this more aesthetic. That's the final word we can say, because we are speaking about beauty of these two art forms in the religion.
Yeah.
So every aspect of religion has contributed to the art forms to enhance the beauty and aesthetic value.
I think dance and music is also responsible for to take the ideology of Hinduism, to spread the Hinduism into the whole world, because they're all seeing and being attracted by this.
It gives a global appeal.
Yes.
Yeah.
It
So
has
art
an
form gives a global
individual
appeal.
expression,
Yes.
by values,
Yeah.
individualistic.
So with this, we come to the end of today's panel discussion. Thank you all for giving this opportunity to Singapore Indian Finance Society to have this wonderful time with you and all. And we proceed on to the closing prayers. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Namaskar.
ॐ सर्वेषां स्वस्तिर्भवतु सर्वेषां शान्तिर्भवतु सर्वेषां पूर्णं भवतु सर्वेषां मङ्गलं भवतु सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः।